and it's a big workout. 12 players. We'll have several more, so it's the process is beginning, and we're getting there.
Anything stand out that you can share with us besides Zach Levine maybe jumping 46 inches?
Well, we had a couple of really, really good showings athletically. There's a lot of components to evaluating the draft. We do a lot of things. We do interviews and stuff like athletic ability and shooting drills and playing. So there's a lot of components to evaluating whether a player, and then you have to project out how good a player is going to be too. Some players have gone to school 3 or 4 years, and some have gone 1 year, and actually some of the guys are yet to even turn 19 years old.
When you look at the talent, do you still feel that there's a lot of depth in this draft?
There is. I think the big difference is getting players or a player or two that can help you right away, versus maybe having to wait 2 or 3 years, which is what you normally have to do, with young kids.
Mitch, how's the coaching search going? Will you have someone in place by the draft?
John, I don't think that was on our list of questions. And didn't you say Bresnahan was going to answer it?
Oh, you're not allowed to talk about it?
The coaching search is ongoing, and as you've read, we've interviewed several candidates. We'll interview more. Other than that, there's really nothing to add right now, Mike.
What do you get out of a workout that you don't get from? You've scouted some of these guys since high
yes.
school. What are you getting in a interpersonal?
Well, not since high school. We're not allowed to go to high school.
Right, that's right. I can't do that anymore. But
I don't want to
you've
be
had your eye on
fined.
them for a while.
Yes.
What are you getting out of these?
Well, not for a while. Most of these guys have been around for 1 year, maybe. It's a good thing to get out of the high school. But when you're in the high schools, you got to watch them a little bit longer. But it's a good thing not to be in the high schools. But a lot of the players, they're one and done. So you get to watch them, 1 year, from a distance, and you really can't, watch them close up until postseason. And Chicago is really, evolved into, a venue where it's a lot of interviews and testing and measurements and very little basketball.
Is the basketball more important what you're watching here, or is the interview, or is it all?
It's all a piece. It's a puzzle, and you're trying to put the pieces together and get the best player potentially, and also somebody hopefully that can help you now.
You said the day after the lottery you expect to get a good player. You're seeing a lot of the guys who might fall to 7. You still feel that way?
I still think we'll get a good player. I do. Hopefully we pick the right player. But there's a lot of talent. Some of the talent is young and goes out a couple of years. I don't know, based on the player, you might wait. I mean, if you remember back 18 years ago, we drafted Kobe, and Kobe played, limited minutes his first year, and then, in fact, he was frustrated his first year. He didn't play as much as he wanted. And of course Andrew didn't play much at all his first year, and you had to wait on Andrew a little bit more than you had to wait on Kobe. So that's a concern, and something that we have to look at when making our selection.
Mitch, how do you weigh athletic ability with the polished finished product of where they're at right now?
Well, first of all these guys are athletic. Even some of the guys that you may look at and you say, well, he doesn't measure up compared to some of the guys. Some of them are deceptively, good athletes, and at this level, they're all pretty good. But it is a factor. Doesn't always mean that a guy can play basketball, but it is a factor.
How do you figure out whether or not the guy can play the game?
You could tell. We've got a bunch of people in here that have been around for a long time. They've played, and you can just tell.
So then do you get clarity after a day like this as far as the talent, or do you still feel like there is uncertainty?
Well, if the draft were today, we would draft based on what we know as of today, but it's not. We have another, 20 days, and you're allowed to bring players back twice. So I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of these guys didn't come back a second time.
Mitch, how much strategy went into the way you split up the 2 sessions for trying to see a prospect versus
not a whole lot of strategy. The representatives get very involved. It's they're looking out for their clients' best interests, and you try to make everybody happy, but you can't. At the end of the day, we had 2 cancellations yesterday, and those cancellations changed everything. So I expect to get phone calls from some representatives, later on today that aren't very happy, but that was out of our control.
Mitch, you've been watching a lot of these players for over a year now. What are you trying to get from seeing them in person here today that you haven't seen from going and watching them play in actual games?
Just up front and close, seeing how much they've worked on their game. We get to interview them. We get to administer our testing. We get to know them, by talking to them, hanging around them in the locker room. They get to know our trainers and coaches. So it's more information than we had.
Mitch, when you have cancellations, what can a guy do who was maybe not on the original invited list to kind of get your attention?
Those guys are the big beneficiaries. That they get to work out with some lottery considerations, and they're anxious to be here. They don't say much. They just work as hard as they can, and they benefit.
Is there a guy that comes to mind that maybe had a story like that?
Well, we had 2 here today. I don't know where they go in the draft. Well, we had 3 actually. 1 in the morning session, 2 in the afternoon session. But they're happy to be here. They're getting in front of, they're playing against the best in the country, and they're getting in front of a staff that has, a good pick in the lottery.
What are the challenges going through this process, trying to determine the right player when, there's so much uncertainty in the roster going forward and the system going forward, things like that?
The system going forward?
Depending
on
the
coaches?
Yeah.
Well, it's not that much of a factor. You can argue because we've only got 4 players on the roster. We're not really limited to looking at one position. We need help everywhere. So I think we'd be in a position to take, the best player at almost any position. And even the position we do have covered, he's been around 18 years. So we have to look for beyond that position too. That is a good thing. Sometimes you get put in a position where, we need a point guard and, let's focus on point guards, and you may overlook a player that's going to be a better player down the road.
But if if you had longer-term contracts, guys you could predict would be on the roster, you could see this guy's going to fit in this way. Is that helpful? Is that not necessarily not?
It's year to year. It may or may not.
Is it different to evaluate guards or big men? Is it harder?
There is a difference. Age is a difference. Big men, typically pick up the game later, and they're slower to develop. So there are subtle differences. It's not, always the same. But you could categorize to some degree. Like, for example, Andrew and Kobe. Kobe was much more advanced from a skill point of view. Still young at 17. And Andrew, his body was just developing. He was just learning how to play. And he didn't hit his stride for 3 or 4 years, whereas Kobe was ready to go in 2 years.
You were quoted in Chicago hoping to get another pick, or either in the first round or second round, or hoping to acquire some. Does that have any effect on the amount of players that you had today, and how many you'll look at?
No, we'd still like to, add to our draft selection. Could we move this pick and get multiple picks? Maybe. Could you buy a pick or trade, a future pick for a present pick? Yeah, that's possible. I think picks now are more valuable than they were, so I think it's not as easy as it used to be, but I think that's still a possibility.
Because there's so many players to fill on the roster, how much importance is there when you look at the players' ability to play different positions in terms of maybe 1 and a 2, 3 and a 4?
Not really a factor. Not really a factor.
Mitch, how big was competition today?
Surprisingly young players, when they're working out in a venue like this, they know there's a lot on the line. They compete. They really do. If you look at a couple of the kids, they got floor burns, scratches. They were diving all over the floor. They know what's at stake. They want to put their best foot forward. It's good for them. It's good for us.
If you guys do stay at 7, how many players do you see actually being considered there to reach that pool?
Well, right now, it's, you'd like to bring in as many as possible. Number one, to make sure you have the number 7 pick covered, and then you don't know what may happen a week or 2 from now where you get another pick. But you're probably looking at 10 to 12 guys that would be considered at that position.
What's a bigger need, guard or big man?
Well, we need a little bit of everything right now. And, we've got 4 players on our roster, and we've got some restricted free agents. We have some free agents that we'd like to sign back. And then there's free agency in general. And then we have cap room, to take on players or to look to make deals. So, we're going to field a team that's going to be very competitive. But right now we just have 4 players on our roster under contract for next year.